But
Oh, sorry.
okay. All right.
Okay, awesome. We probably should start with the prayer. I'm happy to say the prayer this time. Is that all
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
Our dear Father in heaven, we are grateful for this day. We are grateful for the opportunity we had to be able to gather together as a group and to be able to discuss our learnings and our findings as we're presenting for our class. Father, we ask you to please bless us to be able to have a peace of mind and be able to retain the information that we learn and be able to have an insightful conversation as we've spent the past few weeks preparing and studying and learning about our topics. We ask you to please bless that thy spirit may be with us and to watch over us in our different activities. We ask you to please bless that we may be able to do well in our classes and our studies. And we're grateful for the opportunity to be able to study at BYU, Idaho, and get our degrees and continue our education. And we love you very much. We say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Okay, I'm just gonna, oops.
And then
All right.
we need to do our surveys right now. We can do it after, right?
That's what I was gonna do. I didn't want to take notes while people were
Yeah. Okay.
talking.
I just wanted to make sure. Okay. Thanks.
Okay.
I'd like to turn the radio off.
Okay, are you ready for me?
Yeah.
Okay. Have you ever worried that the chair you're about to sit on will collapse under your weight? Have you ever had to pretend that your seatbelt was buckled while riding in your friend's car because it wasn't long enough to reach around? Have you ever had to get off a roller coaster ride in front of a crowd because the safety bar couldn't be pulled down? Well, I have, and this is me living with obesity for most of my adult life. The road that led to my adult obesity was one that I didn't even know I was traveling on as an adolescent. There were no big yellow warning signs that said, "Caution, obesity ahead." Sure, the road was full of bumps and potholes, but how did I know that filling those holes with food would take me on a journey to a destination I never imagined I would someday arrive at? Who decides if someone is considered obese or not? The American Medical Association recognized obesity as a disease in 2013 with the resolution of policy H-440.842. Obesity is a complicated disease. Yes, it's a disease. It keeps people from being able to perform some or many normal functions throughout their day. For example, an obese person struggles to bend over and tie their shoes more than someone who is not obese. They may not be able to acquire certain employment because they are too large to move around certain areas of the job site. Perhaps they are unable to perform certain duties or participate in various activities because the safety equipment just doesn't fit. These are just a few examples of regular activities that are a struggle for an obese person. The Centers for Disease Control defines obesity as having a body mass index, or BMI, at or above the 95th percentile of the CDC sex and age specific BMI. For many, obesity begins when they are young, affecting about 14.7 million children and adolescents, and they are more likely to have obesity as an adult. Adult obesity is also a growing concern as it continues to increase in the United States as much as 41.9% in 2017 through March of 2020. With terrifying numbers like these, obesity becomes not only a concern for the individual, but also for their family and for society. There are many health concerns associated with obesity regardless of age. They include, but are not limited to, high blood pressure, type 2 diabetes, breathing problems such as asthma and sleep apnea, and heart disease. There is a huge economic impact as it relates to obesity, with the U.S. national annual cost of an estimated $173 billion as it relates to healthcare recorded in 2019. Dealing with obesity isn't just about size and physical health concerns. It is also about the human being that is suffering inside a body that seems to be betraying them on a daily basis. Suicide continues to increase among young people, and one of the contributors is isolation and alienation, often affiliated with obesity. For many individuals, as they struggle with anxiety and depression associated with their body image, they turn to the very thing that is harming them, food. It is a rinse and repeat process of not feeling good about their body, eating to ease the pain, and back to not feeling good about their body. But there is good news. Changes can be made. Learning about prevention is a great starting point, and there are many resources available online. These include guides to better nutrition, how to increase physical activity, and other helpful strategies. It starts with education in the home. Be an example for your friends and family. Start with something as simple as the stairs. Whether you are struggling with obesity or not, taking the stairs is a great way to get a little exercise. Change can also be made through policies, such as through school nutrition. If the meals served in a school district are contrary to supporting a healthy diet, attend a school board meeting and present a prepared and respectful argument for changing policy to include healthier meals for students. Support can also be found online for those suffering from eating disorders connected to obesity and the mental health challenges they face. Sit down and listen to someone who is struggling. It can be very helpful. It's not about giving advice, it's about listening and providing personal support. It's time to think outside the constraining and restrictive box that has been used to create or introduce policies addressing obesity. Many policies want to restrict certain foods, where foods can be sold, how much food can be sold. These may help, however, they are more restrictive than productive. They only address a small part of the issue, food consumption. We need policies in place to address the reasons individuals are turning to food as coping mechanisms, such as better mental health support. More research is needed to find the originating issues rather than just treating the symptoms. Obesity is not a disease that shows up suddenly one morning. It is something that occurs over time and becomes a part of that person. It impacts physical health as well as mental health. It does not discriminate against age, race, or religion. It is a daily battle against stigma, embarrassing moments, and lost opportunities. It is more than a size. It is more than a disease. It is the person suffering from the disease, and many of us know it all too well.
Great job.
Okay, whew, done. Okay, questions?
One of the questions that I was thinking about, and even just did a quick little search for some contenders, and many people, right, will tell you that obesity is not a disease, that
Right.
it's not that, because it's preventable risk factors for other diseases, is a result of eating too much and caused by a lack of exercise and those kind of things. And so when those, I guess my question is what do you say or what do you do when people are just blatant like, oh, it's not a disease? Like,
Right. And I think that is very common. And I think it's going back to the American Medical Association in 2013 recognized it as a disease, and it continues to be reaffirmed as such. So meaning it's not like they decided once and then more research has been done and then they went, oh, maybe it's actually not a disease. It continues to be a disease. And part of the definition of a disease is something that keeps a person from performing their daily routine, right? So alcoholism, addiction, those are diseases, right? Certain things. If you cannot function throughout your day and do the things that you need to do, then that is a disease. So that would be my response to that.
My question is, so the policy, so there, let me clarify. So there's already policies to help in the nutrition, for nutrition in school to help with obesity. Is that like, and you said nutrition, is that the food or classes like education that you're saying, or?
Right.
Okay.
I was speaking more to the meals that are provided in
Okay.
the schools. Not all states provide lunches for everybody, and I haven't done enough research for all the states to find out, because even school districts within states can be a little bit different, but some schools provide meals for everybody. Some schools provide only for those who qualify due to finance restrictions. And oftentimes they're more worried about just feeding the kids than what they're feeding the kids. But that's why I say it also needs, it has to start in the home, because carrots might be available for the school lunch, but the kids will walk right past the carrots, right? Because they want the slice of pizza that comes with the carrots, but they don't want the carrots. So helping to educate at home for kids to understand the importance of the different foods that they're eating. But I was addressing more the meals, but absolutely, it would be a great idea to also make sure that there's education about nutrition in the classrooms as well.
So was the education portion, what the policy, because I wrote some notes, instead of covering up, so the policy would be to help like the mental health side of it. Is that a policy you think would that you would like to see implemented, or is there a policy for that?
Right. Well, that's where I think more research needs to be done, because I think people, everybody's addressing the food consumption, right? So there's a lot of policies that are being introduced that say we can't sell, you can't put a fast food restaurant within so many, yards of a school, and you can't do all the, and they're doing food restrictions, and no more supersizing. And that's good. Those are all, I'm not saying those aren't helpful things, but I feel like those are treating the symptoms of obesity.
Right.
And for some people it is overeating. For some people it is but it's not for everybody, And the question is, why are people overeating? Some people who struggle with obesity, maybe it's medication that they're on. For other people, maybe it's thyroid or hormonal, things that are happening within their body that they have zero control over, and they don't even know those things are happening. So it's finding resources, because healthcare is so expensive. So I think it's having to do some research to find out what is triggering different people, right? And then having resources available so that people don't feel like they can't figure out what's wrong, because healthcare costs is so expensive, and they just go, well, I'm just fat because I eat too much. Well, that may not be it at all. And here you're just in this, loop. So I don't know exactly what policies, but I feel like research needs to be done first, and then that could lead the policies.
Perfect. Good job.
Awesome. You did a great job, Tamara.
Thank you.
Good job. Can sleep easy tonight.
Well, maybe.
Yes.
Yes.
Who knows, right?
Right. Thank you.
Okay. I'm happy to go, and then Sarah will have you go. My topic very similar to Tamara's. I talked about obesity, but I took a different route. As mentioned before with policies, I went more around the bariatric surgery and my experiences. But anyways, just to preface that. Okay. I was 21 years old the first time someone told me it wasn't my fault. There's nothing I could have done to stop this from happening. It was my genetics. That's what made me this way. When I was 13 years old, I was diagnosed as pre-diabetic. At the age of 15, I tried every diet that was ever recommended to me. I was restricted due to my weight from applying for a service mission until I had met requirements. I was humiliated and shamed because of my body. No one should ever have to feel that way. In April of 2020, I had reached my highest weight. I was consumed in this addiction and did not know how to escape it. 3 months later, I met with a specialist, and she uttered the words, "It's not your fault. You were made this way. It is your genetics." My world melted away. I felt the expectations of others lift off my shoulder. Obesity is a growing medical and socioeconomic problem. In September of 2020, I laid on a surgery bed, and my life changed forever. I had bariatric surgery, and over the course of 4 years, I overcame habits, addictions, battled mental illness, recovered, and found a secure version of myself. The long-term results of traditional weight loss therapies, including diets, exercise, and medications, are relatively poor. Bariatric surgery is one of the most effective ways of treatment for morbidly obese patients to allow substantial sustained weight loss and to improve or resolve obesity-associated comorbidities, thereby reducing mortality. Obesity has an overall impact on Americans and society today. Nationally, 4.19% of adults have obesity. Obesity rates are also increasing among children and adolescents. Nearly 20% of U.S. children ages 2 to 19 are obese. This affects their moods, confidence, self-worth, and so much more. The baseline in my life was that I wanted to feel good. It didn't matter what the weight was on a scale. It was the fact that I wanted to be healthy. I wanted to feel as though I could do things. I just wanted to be able to function in day-to-day tasks, and this disease was preventing me from living that lifestyle. For the first time in my life, I was motivated to beat the odds. I quickly learned the study of the human mind. I thought that after losing the weight, I would be happy. I had never been lower. At the age of 22, I had people make comments that said, well, if I had that kind of money, I'd take an easy way out too. I thought you were pretty then, but wow, look at you now. And so many more comments that brought me to the lowest point in my entire life. This was a disease that I still faced. This was indeed not an easy way out, and I was witnessing it firsthand. In a research article done by Wiley, it states disordered eating behaviors progressively reappear post-bariatric surgery, and their underlying mechanisms are unclear. Preoperative disorder eatings has been linked to long-term and post-operative disorder eating behaviors. Although preoperative binge eating had no effect on post-surgical weight loss up to 60 months after surgery, these addictions, habits, and lifestyles don't just leave you on the operating table. It takes years, months, and weeks of consistent effort to continuously remain and maintain your weight post-obesity. I was still the same Cassie that I was back at the beginning of my journey. I got unwanted attention and comments about my body. I slowly began to shut down. My body became a topic of conversation rather than a personal motivator. I don't share this with you as to sound as a woe is me. I share this as an arm of friendship. I'm well aware, based on studies and other stories, that I am not alone in this feeling. Obesity takes a grasp on us whenever we least expect it. Clearly, actions by governments and other relevant institutions is needed to halt the obesity epidemic. But what measures are justified? Although the associated adverse behavior is more readily identified than for obesity, the major successes of tobacco control have linked to the application and implementation of broad range of policies. Obesity control policy is way more complex than we make it seem. The need for government to step in is a personal choice, but there are ways that they can help to moderate how food is made, what is available, to instill healthier eating choices, which could help the overall health of Americans, not only physically, but in their mental health. I give a word of action to anyone struggling right now and seeking a way out of this obesity, to help find your motivation for escaping and overcoming this disease. Write down what you're searching for, find a support system on which you can lean on in times of need. Search for help from professionals who will build you up, those you can trust. Know, trust, and find comfort in the knowledge that you're not alone on this journey. Hundreds of people suffer every single day through this disease. It is not easy. Through this upward battle together, we can strive to overcome and to escape it. But we are not alone. It's not our fault. It's simply our genetics. Okay. Any questions?
So
Yeah. Oh, go ahead, Sarah, you go
you
first. Oh, am I going first? Okay. I was trying to find a article, Wiley, I think is also, I found an article by Wiley that lists a lot of the risks regarding bariatric surgery. In your research, did you find that the risks or the reward outweigh the risks of the bariatric surgery? Because it can be so, I understand that every person is different, so the possibilities are very different.
Yeah.
But as a general rule,
Yeah, I had looked into that as well, especially in the past few weeks as I was just trying to put all my thoughts together in different things. And I did find an article in 2023 that I had kind of quoted a little bit, that just, I think it was from, maybe it was Wiley. I can't even remember which source it was exactly, but just kind of said that exact same thing. Like it's such, and that's the interesting thing where I kind of want to portray that as well, where it's like, where I was taking a different route on it of like how it's such as like depends on each person and things.
Right.
But statistics have shown more and more frequently that bariatric surgery is more of a tool, and it's like more of a, not like an easy way out or like like a quick fix per se, I guess. And
Right.
so there was a quote that I had in there that just talked about how it is one of the most leading best ways to be able to help that. And now like insurances are starting to recognize it as like, oh yeah, this is like a way to help, like a way to like help instill that. And so I did find a few interesting articles in my kind of studies about that. So because it's kind of like you get the best of both worlds, right? Or like the worst, you see the best and the worst in different things, but that's kind of what I found about it.
Yeah. Well, the thing that was interesting as I was looking at all the potential risk, it talks about neonatal risks, which I didn't even think about making a connection of neonatal risks along with
Yeah.
bariatric surgery. So that's another, like, it's another healthcare cost, right? That throws in there. So it's
Yeah.
where do you spend the money in the healthcare? preventative or reactive, right? These are the
Yeah.
things that have to be considered, I think, so.
Yeah. And the neonatal, that's with kids, isn't it? Like being able
Yes.
to have kids. And
Mhm.
that's an interesting thing. I didn't do much research on that, but I did it when I was having surgery, like back 4 years ago. And the interesting thing that I found is, so I actually had the VSG, so I had the sleeve done,
Okay,
and everyone had recommended to do, or shied me away from doing the RNY, which is like a very common one. They've done it for many, 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 many years because of that fact, because there was so many issues. And I would talk to my surgeon who's like, if you'd go this route, the only precaution that comes with what I did is that, just like, if you're going to try to have kids, make sure you get on prenatals and make sure you get like your vitamins in beforehand, just in case. And so that's a big part of it. And I feel like they're starting to combat that now with different options, and they're shying away from having anybody under a certain age limit have that RNY surgery because they're such a high risk. And that I was like, I wasn't even going to touch it.
right, yeah.
Right. So it is interesting though. And people had no idea. They were like, oh, I never would have thought of that. And I'm like, I wouldn't either until my surgeon mentioned it.
Right. Well, and it makes sense because when you have the bariatric surgery, your body is depleted of a lot of nutrients, right? That's part of, and
Yeah.
so your body needs those nutrients to pass them on to your unborn child. And so we just, it's that it's thinking of the now, right? Trying to deal with the now, not thinking of how is this going to impact me down the road if I choose to have children or whatever. Yeah. So
Yeah. There's so much more to the picture that you're
there is
like,
so much more to the picture.
it's
Absolutely.
interesting. They have you meet with lots of like psychologists and different things and counselors to make sure you fully understand. And they won't do it unless it's been like 8 or 10 months of you like actually understanding like what's going to happen, how
Right.
it's going to go and things, which is a really good. And I feel like that's a policy that should be implied, especially with these kind of things. Cause it's like, if it's not implied and I had no idea, I would be shocked and I would be felt so like, well, now what? Like,
Right.
right. And so it is interesting.
Okay.
Okay, my question is there a correlation with having the bariatric surgery with prescription drug addiction?
Addictions. There definitely could be. And so that's one of the interesting things about it is like the correlation to being able to like, I wouldn't want to say like overdose, but like there's only like a certain amount like that you can actually have, just due to like the size of your stomach like ratio. And so for me, that's like an interesting sorry, my mom like walked in the middle. So like I was like, what is she doing? But yeah, so that's kind of the interesting thing. I actually didn't do much studying on that, but I would be interested to see do different dosages of different things. And even I had a procedure done later on when I had to go back into like a doctor and things like that. And it's one of the very first things I disclose to all medical providers. That way they know, because even like anesthesiologists and things like that, like if there's any sort of like uppage, it could like hurt me or like it wouldn't work. Or like sometimes it doesn't work and they're like, why isn't this working? And I'm like, oh, I've had bariatric surgery. Like, oh, well, I can only give you half of the dosage of this. So I'm glad you told me. Like, and those kind of things. But it'd be interesting to do a little more deep dive study into the policies of that and seeing like what goes where and why, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
So yeah. Any other questions?
No, I think you did a great job. I think it's definitely something that affects our families. It doesn't affect just the person struggling
Yeah.
with the disease, and going through the surgery impacts the family. It's a commitment. It is a big deal. So it's all, yeah. And I think
Nice
having
deal.
policies regulating and having counseling and those things, I think those are all valid and important
Yeah.
things to consider.
Yeah.
Great job.
Awesome. Okay, Sarah, your turn.
Okay. I keep trying to see which glasses won't make me look like I'm a grandma and doing readers. Okay. Rebecca was 33 years old, married with 7 children, when she received a call that would alter her reality. Her mom called and said it wasn't going to work out with her dad of 37 years. He filed the papers. Then, shortly after, her father sent a text message asking if she had any questions. In the days and months and years to follow, she was overwhelmed with feelings: shock, sadness, grief, anxiety, fear, depression. every painful emotion you could think of. Rebecca was the oldest child, and now she found herself in the middle of her parents' divorce. And with the added task of holding her siblings together during this tumultuous time. She felt betrayed and abandoned by her parents and found herself questioning her own marriage, her husband's loyalty, and her commitment to her vows. She looked all over the internet for some advice, but there were not any resources she could find. Research shows that the divorce rate has more than doubled since 1990 for couples over the age of 50, and many couples suffer from empty nest syndrome, a term used to describe feelings of distress and depression in married adults whose children turn 18 or leave home, and a time when the marital problems increase. Without the shared focus of raising children, they often realize they have little in common, leading to feelings of disconnection. This means that roughly 1 in 4 divorces, known as gray divorce, occur to persons aged 50 and older, and researchers predict gray divorces will triple by 2030. People may think, why would couples in midlife want to make such a drastic change in marital status? Haven't they seemed to effectively maneuver through the ups and downs of the typical married life so far? Don't they care about the time they've already invested in each other? Haven't they already successfully raised children to adulthood, or at least close to it together? What could possibly go wrong at this stage in their lives? Aren't they with their soulmates by now? The end of a gray divorce often means the end of family rituals and celebrations. Family holidays take on different meanings as they split holidays with each parent. Often, holidays and birthdays, graduations, and special occasions are a reminder of the past. Adult children mourn the loss of these family experiences. This can create a disconnect with parents, which decreases the well being of both parent and adult child. The stability of their own marriage is called into question, whether they can maintain a lasting relationship or even fear of repeating similar patterns in their marriages. This can lead to anxiety, depression, or even doubt in the union of marriage. The added stress on top of taking care of the family and career can be overwhelming. The potential long-term psychological ramifications of gray divorce for adult children and grandchildren are profound and complex. Parental divorce can affect up to 4 generations, causing strained relationships and deep emotional rifts. Unlike what many believe, the effects of gray divorce in families extend beyond the couple who are parting ways. It deeply impacts adult children and grandchildren. Gray divorce is threatening the family. Had incentivized counseling and courses been available, would Rebecca be in this position? One policy that would lower the percentage of divorces would be to implement a free or discounted price for a marital license by taking a premarital counseling course. Premarital counseling studies have shown that it can reduce the likelihood of a future divorce by 50%. Poor communication in a relationship is the #1 reason why couples split up. In reviewing research, a program the government could get behind could be PrEP, the acronym for Prevention and Relationship Education Program. One individual reported that premarital counseling teaches you how to get along and that you should communicate, but it doesn't really talk about the phases of marriage over time. Real life is going to kick in, and you have to really have some tools to deal with it. When you run into bumpy roads and are faced with challenging times, this equips you with a firm foundation on how to resolve conflict. A way to incentivize, I am like, sorry, I'm blanking on how to pronounce this word for a second. A way to incentivize couples to take an annual prevention course could be give a tax credit for those that complete courses each year. The government should set aside funds to help ease the cost of economic burdens that divorce has on society. Simple programs could impact generations of divorce. I strongly encourage these ideas to be considered for Maricopa County to protect the future of the family.
Great job.
Incentivize. I don't know why I couldn't think of how to say that word. You know,
And
how things are on the tip of your tongue and then you're like, oh my gosh, I've said this a million times and now I've forgotten. Okay, questions.
one of the questions that I have when it comes to gray hair divorce and those kind of things is I think about, are there some of those like loss of long-term companionship, like if someone's been together, like if it's not a mutual separation or different things, like after decades together, the loss of a life partner can be deeply felt. Like how, like, did you do some studies on that? Like what were kind of some of the experiences maybe you saw or kind of read about or looked into about like the long-term effects of losing somebody that you spent so many years of your life, built a family with, and those kind of things?
So like if one person wanted to get divorced and the other one didn't want to get a divorce,
Yeah.
well, um, there usually it's one person that files, not the other person that files, but they also realistically they always it kind of seemed like the person that filed didn't file was okay with the other person filing. They didn't want to be the one that filed to end it, but they were okay with it. But yes, there are ramifications. There is um, depression for both the adult child and for the person going through the divorce because there is a loss, there's a grief. Going through a divorce, no matter what age or stage of it is, there's a grief process that you do go through. And there's stages of this. You know, that's why they say don't go right into another relationship. You need some
Yeah.
time to grieve and process it and grow from it.
Yeah. That's awesome. Thanks.
Um, for gray divorce, so divorce of older people, is there any information on the difference between whether it's better that maybe they should have gotten divorced at an earlier, I understand the idea is to not get divorced in the first place, but that's just not going to hold for
Right.
everybody. So is there any information out there about should those couples have just gotten divorced earlier? And because I'm not articulating very well. Oftentimes you hear couples stay together for the children, and then as soon as the children are gone, they get divorced. Should they have just been divorced from the get-go when the troubles were happening and then go from the, you know what I mean? Is there a difference in the impact, and does it matter if they waited or not? Ooh, that was a tough question to get out.
Yeah, what I mean, I can't, I can just tell you what I have read.
Sure.
There's a lot more problems with the divorce from the younger age because there's no father in the home. There's the fatherless, and there's the poverty. There's excessive of, you know, more men are in prison that are fatherless, more teen pregnancy. So that's a whole nother ramification of problems. Those of adult children are already past those stages. They have more emotional issues, and usually there are up to 2 to 4 years after the divorce of a family of their parents. They might need professional counseling or therapy, but they have an adult mind, so they're able to process it and get through it faster than the younger children that are lifelong repercussions or consequences of the choices that they make versus as an adult. But that's all I can see. But I mean, it is, I don't want to say it's more detrimental because I don't feel like it is, but it is way up there because I mean, can you imagine like Rebecca that I interviewed? She actually is my niece. And her husband was my nephew, is the bishop at the time. And here they are, have 7 kids, everything's fine. And she's going through this. And the next thing they know, he's the bishop and he's going to marriage counseling, you know what I mean? To help his wife be able to go through this. So you can understand the repercussions of this. And now it's 4 years later, you know, and there's studies, all the steps that you go through. It's a grieving process when your parents go through a divorce, and she's gone through every single one of those, um, the steps except the last one, and that is when your parent starts dating someone else. They haven't, neither one of her parents are dating anyone else, but in time that will probably happen.
Right.
And so she continues to have to navigate this situation. Before she goes, my siblings and I had to just think our parents are dead. They can't come to holidays anymore. We can't have them there. It's it's too detrimental, and we want to keep up the tradition. So the five siblings got together and they do their own Christmas and their own Easter and their own birthday parties once a month. And it puts a lot of stress on her because she's the oldest child to still keep that tradition going. I'm sure
Right.
if you didn't have a religious background or you weren't LDS and the family was so important, you'd just be like, you do your thing, I'll do your thing. We love each other, and you would have to start these new ones. But because they have that bond, they want to continue with that,
Right.
and
In your example, you talked about Rebecca as the adult child of parents getting divorced. And I don't know if you said it or not, and I apologize if you did, but are there increased numbers of people like Rebecca getting divorced now because she is doubting her own marriage? Is there is not a causation, but a correlation between, parents getting divorced, the gray divorce,
right.
and their adult children now questioning or doubting, or does it impact their desire to even get married in the first place? Maybe their children
Right,
are young
absolutely.
and they don't want it, are those numbers starting to show at all?
There's some correlation of divorce itself. I don't know necessarily about gray divorce. I don't think there's enough studies done yet because this is such a new thing. Before, my generation, you never heard anybody getting
Mhm.
divorced if they've been married for 37 years. That was very,
Sure.
and so with this new thing, I think there needs to be more studies out. We do know that that's how cohabitation kind of started. Is I'm scared. Let's try it out to see before we
Mhm.
get married. Cohabitation wasn't a huge thing when I was a young adult, and so we can see that and see that there's commitment issues, and things like that. But as far as sometimes when I was talking to Rebecca, she's like, I felt like I was almost self-sabotaging my own relationship with my husband because I'm like, well, if my parents did it, I'm going to do it. And so I think you have to work through that. And, she had to go to counseling and therapy that's them, not us. It's kind of like when it's a grieving process because it's like as a parent and your child goes astray or does something that's not in your moral compass, you have to kind of go through a grieving process that, oh, that's not a reflection on you. That's them and their choices that they make. But it's a process as a parent you have to go through with as well. Does
Right.
that make sense?
Yep. Very good.
Awesome. Great job. I'll stop the recording here.
Okay.